All right, welcome everyone to this final session slot and my final session here at DNN Connect. The goal of this session is to briefly run through a development process of a module that avoids loading web forms, avoids the whole ASCX, let's say templates, and tries to build things up actually using Razor and WebAPI mostly. And this is a development method that you can use already in the 7.4 and 7.3 and 7.2 and 7.1 branch. So I encourage you, if you need to target on these platforms, to look at this, because I think there's some interesting aspects to it. So the goal I set out to do is to say, okay, well, let's see if we can eliminate the whole all of the web forms and remain compatible with DNN 7. And another pet peeve of mine is to create for a module a solid foundation. And with that, I mean to see your module as a little framework that sits on top of the DNN framework. And I will be offloading a couple of pet peeves on people here. So that if at one point you launch something on GitHub and you don't want snide remarks from me, then... So anyway, to set the scene, so I'm going to try and make a small map module. I was inspired by the fact that, I think it was John Royal at one point who said, where did the map module go, something like that, or does anyone know of a small module to display a map? And I was just at that moment thinking like, okay, what shall I do for the presentation? It's like, okay, so show a Google map and allow people to add markers to that as people with specific permission. I will call them pointers for the sake of this this presentation. And to have a little pop-up show when you click on the marker with a little message. So you get you get coordinates, you get the message, basically. And to, of course, to also like centralize the map somewhere and say, okay, I want to show this map whenever someone arrives on the page. That, of course, for the admin. So, step one, I actually installed the Kristock template, and I ripped out a whole bunch of stuff that I never use. And the only ASCX actually I've left in there is settings, because in terms of performance, of course, that's not the one that's going to break your back, right? It just loads when the module settings loads, and so in general, it's just not being used. I have a CSS file. I have a DNN file, a manifest to use. I've left the build scripts in here, but for the demo, I'm not going to start building this stuff to a package, so I'll leave it at that. And the local resources file. So basically, I've just more or less chucked most of the stuff out. Now, next step is to talk a little bit about foundation. So obviously, this is what happens when you have a bad foundation. I think most of you have seen pictures like that. And I think for most of you who've done multiple modules already in your life, you already realize that how you start your project pretty much determines how you can maintain your code on a longer time scale. So a good foundation, I tend to be a bit anal about these kind of things. Like, it has to be, it has to be solid and conducive to various scenarios in the future. Anyway, so build for growth. I found this picture, and it's something that I always remember. I was in Greece, and apparently the way they build there is they would build a couple of floors of a house, flat roof. And I saw these. I don't know if you can actually see it, but the steel comes out of the top, and I was wondering about that. So I asked the locals, "So what's the deal? I mean, it's not very pretty." He said, "Yeah, well, they have kids, and then one day, they need to live somewhere, and then when he has the money, boom, next floor comes onto it. And it's interesting because structurally, you can't change the foundation anymore at that point in time, right? So the foundation had better be like over-dimensioned, if you like, and for these kind of applications. So I thought it was an interesting concept, but indeed it is a lot like this. So how the way we stratify our application is we have ASP.NET right at the bottom, we have DNN one layer above that, and then we have our ASCX directly loaded by the mechanism to sit on top of that, and that gets served out to our clients. Now, one of the things I feel very strongly about is just adding a base class when you start your module. So who does that when they begin a new module? Who adds a base class? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, 6. Okay, not yet.
I'm not a developer.
Oh, you're not a developer. Okay, so you're excused. Anyway, adding a base class that captures settings, and I named 2 things that for me usually go in there. Settings and security allows me throughout my module, wherever, to always address my settings and security as if they were, first-class citizens in my whole infrastructure. So let's, without further ado, just implement those. I'm going to do this extremely quickly this way and reload my project. And what I do, I think this, for those of you who do a base class, should come as no surprise. I have lazy loading, 2 lazy loading properties, module settings and a context security. I will, name, of course, is in the eye of the beholder, if you find them pretty enough. But anyway, so 2 properties, security and settings, for me that are lazy loading, and I have a method where I will add any services, any JavaScripts, etc., that I might need in a control. All my module JavaScript, etc., in there, so that any control can just ask that and say, oh, by the way, I do depend on the whole services layer being there, and then boom, it will be fired out. And a base method to add a JavaScript file which immediately already knows where to find that and adds a version number behind it, so that when I make an update on the client side, when people upgrade, they might have an old JavaScript file still cached. Who's run into that? Anyone? Yeah. So you change a little bit of the service and people are saying, hey, it doesn't work. And it's like, can you press F5? And it's like, where's F5? You go like right at the top of your keyboard. But it's not the same on a Mac. And you're like, why did this stuff have to be so difficult? Okay, so I just add always a little gizmo at the end of it to make sure that that gets refreshed the minute I roll out a new version to people. This is not the heart of the presentation. It's just like a couple of to-dos I run through when I create something. Now, module settings has all the concentrates everything that I do in terms of serializing and deserializing the settings, and make sure that I have all of those as just regular properties in my, wherever I am in my control. Makes life a lot easier. Context security, what it does is I've added my, the view, edit, and admin security of DNN in there. So at any point in time, I can say, okay, security can view, can edit, or is an admin. And I've added the security that we're going to add for the module called a pointer in there, so I can always ask for like, okay, is this user someone who has that security or not? All right, so far so good. I just created like a small base layer for me to now start constructing my module on. And let's see if I have a meaningful slide. That's right, to move forward with. It's like, okay, now I'm going to add in support for Razor. So at this point in time, I'm still assuming all this development was still the same, whether you were, whatever direction you were heading, you're using web forms, I do the very same thing as well. But now I want to go and target Razor. Now, how many of you know that when you make the a module definition and you add a control, that you can actually just use a class rather than an ASCX there? Yes, exactly. He wrote it. And Joe will know it as well, and Kahal will know this as well. How many of you actually use that sometimes? That you, instead of going like view.ascx or you know my.ascx, use a class identifier there. Anyone? No? Okay. Well, then at least some stuff will be new. So let's go for the following steps. So in fact, what I'll do is I will now have for the first part, this now inherits from Portal Module Base. So the Portal Module Base is where the web forms train kind of runs for DNN, and I am going to hook that into the Razor host. Now, Razor host. What is it again? Razor host module, Razor module base, that one. So basically it's kind of like the same one, but then what it adds here is that now it will start to look for a CS HTML file to load, to pump out over the wire. And what I will do is I can actually remove this one. And at this point, I'm good. I'm going to create now a module home class here. So add a new class that I will call module home. All right, and this module home is going to inherit from my module base. There you go, duck. All right. And now the thing I need to add, what it is expecting. Does it already know the overrides the Razor script? Razor script file. Yeah, thank you. And then what I'm going to return is a file that I will point it to. So in this instance, and I have to find a squiggly line, which on a Mac keyboard is, I have no clue where that is. Because I'm actually using a Swiss-French keyboard, and they did remove the squiggly line from somewhere. So you're going to have to bear with me while the squiggly line is not there, but desktop modules, it will be there when I run the git thing again. /map/views/home.cshtml. Right. So at this point in time, and I of course will create a folder. And a folder that will be the views, right? That's where I'll hold all my views, and I will add a Razor file there. Razor file, and I will call it home. And I'll clear all that stuff out, right? And say, okay, well, you know, I have just the hello. DNN Connect, clear that one out. Now, I still have the page init to go. So because what I want to do with the page init, it's case sensitive. I hate that about the C#, but yeah. I'll do the add service. Right, that's make sure that gets pumped out over the wire, and this is what I have to set. Local resource file equals, and I need to have some way of making sure that for the Razor engine to work, it expects two things. It expects, or three things, if you think about it. So it expects the Razor file, obviously, to be mentioned. It expects a resource file that it knows where to get local resources from, and it will expect the data, if you like, if you're passing in a model for the Razor file, but it's not a requirement. But let's just add in the this, and I will have to, I'm going to add that first to a common class and call this goals, and here I will go, and it's going to be called string moron.
You're having fun with that, Mac, Peter.
I am. I usually work from a keyboard on my lap, and it has a few more keys on it than this one does. So anyway, this and for argument's sake, I guess you know how to specify a shared resource file, and I'll go back here and say, okay, this is my globals dot shared resource file name. Boom. Okay, that should be it. Now, at this point in time, this is all set up to call up that page and actually serve it up. So I'm going to fast forward my Git here to step 3, and that, sorry, here. There we go, same thing. And we now have that globals class, and now it's there is a squiggly line that I couldn't type, and the squiggly line should be here as well. There we go. It's a squiggly line here, and we have our first view here. Okay, so hello DNN Connect. Right. By this time, I'm set up to begin constructing the module actually in the site. So we have I have a default website here where all I did actually was switch out just a bit of the Bootstrap 2 to Bootstrap 3, so it shows up a little bit weird. But now we have to build a manifest, right, to get the definition going. So for the next step, all I just need to do is just get the manifest and make sure that I change this, not this part, but here you go, the module definition, that's the important one. Here we go. Things like the folder name, which is actually, I don't know why Chris decided to do it this way, but I consider that bad practice to have where did the backslash go? Yeah, somewhere here, there we go. And this, and then instead of the control source being view.ascx, so here comes a little bit of magic that I wanted to show. We now have a fully qualified name for the what did I call it? Okay, that, and then that's the module home, right? And that is on the same thing. I always have this convention. Boom.
You can actually leave out the assembly and the build server.
Oh, okay.
It does detect it. But
we're going to try that.
should detect it.
Should detect it.
Yeah, it will.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's not push the boundaries right now. For fear of, and I will rip out the edit control and leave the settings control as it is, although it does sit under Connect, of course. Okay, so basically you get the point that currently for the control source, I've just added a qualified name of a class in there. And now DNN, the engine, will look for that class and load it up. It will find a Razor, something that inherits from Razor host, will fire up the whole Razor mechanism. So now I'm just going to advance Git again for one step, and we should be back here, and by now it should be all properly set up. And I've also added the permission. Anyone ever used special permissions in their module? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 6. Yeah. Neat feature, and think about it, about using that for when it's necessary, because sometimes modules are wasteful in having to require users to be set to have edit rights to the whole module, meaning they can change all kinds of stuff, whereas you would rather like them to be contained and just like to do a specific task within a module, and then don't hesitate to use the permission. So permission, add it to the DNN system by specifying that in your manifest and say, okay, well, I've got a permission that is this and this and this. At this point in time, we're actually ready for this site to accept the manifest. I'm just going to actually make sure that we build the DLL into the bin folder so that it will actually find it at one point, if we actually need to add it, and we're going to log in. And this time I will forgive it for being slow because it does have to rebuild. And add the manifest to our extensions. 1 thing, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is something I really have to do, so I can't skip through that with. There we go. Now, go to hosts, extensions. Right, create new module. How do we create the module? Well, we create it from a manifest, and we already have everything set up. It's in Connect, it's in Map, and that's the one, and let's create it. At this point in time, it does not give me a lot of feedback, but I guess it went well. Let's have a look. It should have created it. No? Did it crap out somewhere? It apparently crapped out. Could it be that adding yet again the permission has caused this to fail or not? Right, because I did do the demo before, of course, on my PC. Okay, well, we're going to try that again briefly. So look, create a new module, done, manifest, boom, connect, map. All right, we're going to be stuck here for the rest of the day. That doesn't work. Module definitions. All right. Nope. It looks like I'm just going to very quickly have to fire up a.
Manually set it up.
I have to manually apparently set it up. Where is it? Map? Oh, it's here.
There.
It's there. Okay. Well, let's fire it up and see how we. Surprise, surprise! Exactly. But now, exactly. The permission is gone, right? Yeah. Let me. Okay. Actually, let me rip it out manually. Here we go. Map, module, and delete. Okay, and do not delete files. Better not. Right. Okay. Return. There's no uninstall. Okay. Good. Now we're going to go back, and hopefully this time it's going to go well. Manifest. Connect. Map. Yep, that looks better. All right, and I'm going to go to wherever I'm going to stick my module, and now add a new module, and it should be showing up somewhere along here. Please give me more. Yeah. Map, there it is, and add it to the content pane. All right, okay, we're all set. Good. So there we are. So hello, DNN Connect came up. So far, so good. At this point in time, all we have running is just a Razor view, right? So now, let me draw it up again. Here we go. Sorry. And of course, you can begin to use hello, and DNN.user. No, Acon. DNN should be there. The DNN helper should be there. No, it's not there. Oh wait, I haven't constructed that part yet. No. User controller. No, okay, well forget it. I was gonna hobby around and show how you could draw up the username here, but that's a bit more involved if you don't have the helpers. So anyway, you get the picture. We've got a Razor host running on, but now we're gonna progress. Next step, and I'm going to create just a layer in the for these pages to be able to access various things from my module. And for that, I would like to add, so base class in under a Razor view is actually a .NET web page is the base class that we all work from. So I'm going to add actually my web page. So it's going to be called map web page, right? And I will be inheriting from .NET Nuke web page. Boom. There you go. And it's an abstract class actually, so I don't need to implement everything. So there you go. And I will add a snippet here to add the so where's the snippets exactly? There we go. Right, and in this case I don't have a module context, but I have the, is it again the active, no, not the active module. I have the module context, don't I? And the other snippet is the security one. Copy. Right, I get those in there, and I need to do the same thing for the of type thing. Right, and I need to add the script to the module base, right? So as I'm pumping out the service, I need to add the service here, which is the client resource manager does that. Client resource manager register script and page, and then path to script. And that's the script I'm going to be adding, and which is in fact the Google API script. And I'm going to load that at 70. Okay, so that should take care of that. And now I need to inherit the home screen from our module now. So inherit, and then connect. So now all of a sudden you get your IntelliSense on the various bits and pieces, and I can start to add the Google map to it. So what that looks like is this. There you go. So the Google map is I'm actually, so in the settings I had added a map width and a map height as a. I need to maybe use wrap around. Right. Yeah. And there's a little script snippet by Google to initialize a map on a page. Now the one thing I'm probably going to get in trouble for is the fact that I don't have an internet connection currently. And that's going to be really a bummer because this map is not going to show up. I have the register script, which shows the Google map, and That's right, time to fire it up. Okay, let's go. Sorry. That is going to be painful. There's still no internet connection. Anyone been able to connect to Saint-Estève?
I'm checking it out. Is it just bad in this room?
Yeah, there's apparently it's like there's a wireless connection to this room, and
I'm on the
you're on DNN Connect as well.
I think they ran out of IPs. I haven't been able to connect.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, then I just need to.
No, Mac has an issue, but
No,
my
but
Mac, I can't connect my Mac.
oh, you can't connect your Mac either.
I think the router's just out of IP leases.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Shall I disconnect?
Well, I just disconnected from Saint.
Okay.
DNN Connect and I connected to Saint.
Seems like we're all
Yeah.
awake here. Well done.
Dang. Because, yeah.
Ik ben nu naar Saint-Estève, dus ik ben de DNN Connect.
This is yeah, it's not nice. This. Oh crap. At one point we may need to squat the other room. Just go to the other room and get the connection.
I share mine here.
Yeah. All right.
What's that password?
Give me a pen.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Let me see if it will turn up.
We can see in type.
1, 2.
It still hasn't come up.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it should
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
That's
still
the one.
is.
That's the one.
be. Let me?
Yes.
Oh gosh, what a keyboard.
Yes.
What was it then?
You €10 for 500 meg.
Thanks. I'll cut these out, Safari, so they don't take up any bandwidth. And let's see if we can. All right, there you go. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so now we have our map up in our Razor host, and now we're going to the next thing is actually to hook into a database and get some points onto that map. Now, for that purpose, I created a no, not that pillar. I created this. There we go. And went to the database, and then we get to the right database. I go to the table, and I have a connect map points. Design of that is, auto incrementing integer, module ID, so it's scoped by module, latitude, longitude that are reals, a little message, and the audit fields, right? No miracles there. I added a few by hand just to make sure that when we get started that we have something there. And
Your module ID would have changed though now because you created a new instance.
Thank you, Charles. Indeed. Thank you. Indeed, I have. How do you find the module ID? Well, if you drill down into this, actually inspect the element, you will see the module ID being emitted, and it's actually 1417. So let's quickly correct that. There you go. So, this point in time, I need to I need to wire that up with a DAL. And for the DAL, I'm using the DAL2 with some auto-generated code by my own scripts. And if the fly would please go away. That looks something like this. So let's cut that one out. Let's close that one, and just show you where I have all of a sudden a lot of control. Although quite a few classes got added, then they're all very big. So the way I do this is I add a table and a view. The view has the same name as the table, just the VW in front of it. And the view connects to the users to get the last users, last modified by display name and the created by display name. If anyone, let's see that is, so I have a view here that is very similar to the table, right? Something like this. So far so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack those two and make sure that add and updates are wired into the table, and that anything that retrieves points to the views. In that case, I have two classes. I have a map point base class that goes to this table, and the map point class that has as a table name the view. They have the primary key, the scope by module ID, and I have a data contract so that all the properties I actually explicitly mentioned for that I would like to emit over the web API if I wanted to. Same thing with this. So I have the properties here, map point ID, and they're all set by default to emit. And I have a repository implementation that here, right? So the map point base repository, the map point repository that inherits from that, that basically copies all the methods out of the Petapoco, so that in my controller now, all of a sudden the code becomes pretty trivial. So I'll show you the controller. Get map points by module ID. Well, that's the scoped get from the repository. Get a single map point by map point ID. Then you do it that way. Add a map point. So what I do here is I set the audit fields first, and then I add it to the repository. Update the map point, you just set the other audit fields as well, and update it, and delete map point. So if you don't know anything about Del2, I suggest you check that out once, and there's some pretty neat patterns to quickly roll out code for that. And then the next step is to get that rolled out. Now, where we're going to do that, let's have a look. We're going to roll out a web API service to draw out those map points and put them on a map. Given our time, I'm going to do that very quickly and show you what has changed. So we now have the services layer. Here we have a service method, and I have a list method that basically gets the map points of the active module ID and will pump them out over the wire. So basically, map points controller list should get you the list of map points that are emitted. And then what do I need to roll out in the view? Well, that is basically, as soon as I've loaded the, as soon as the page is loaded, I load up the map, and then I go to my service, get the data points, and this is actually just very specific to this module, just adding the markers. So I'm not going to drill down into that. The service, however, is something that you should be familiar with. This basically is the pattern we're working with right now, right? A service running off the DNN service framework and using that to get those map points. So if I build this, it should show those first 2 points on the map.
10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. 10 minutes. Yeah, I know. But we started 10 minutes late. I'm going to go for another 10 minutes. And I know it's the last session, so I'm going to be here all night. Because the meat is still to come. Yes, exactly. So now I have my 2 points, right? This is very trivial. Okay. So next step is to make this Ajax call a little bit more generic. I've seen several places, including even in the base framework, where this code gets extremely repetitive after a while. These Ajax calls. So currently, what I do is I split these out and try to simplify my actual specific calls a little bit, that code, so I don't get lost in a whole like wads and wads of Ajax calls, because after a while, I think for one of my last projects I worked on, I think I had at least 40 different service calls, and then it gets to really stack up all this code. So if I do that,
Add some utility methods to DNN, so you won't have to write
Okay.
every time.
okay, there you go. It's right. So this would be the pattern. I would make a generic Ajax call that has the type of calls that get post, controller, action, an ID, other data that you want to pass along, a success method, and a fail method.
Very similar to that one.
Okay, fine. There we go. I love reinventing wheels. It's my major hobby. This will run just the same. Now, then one of the next steps is to also kind of centralize error handling and status messages for people, for when you click and you see something turning, etc. And I don't want that to kind of litter all my code base. So what I do there is, going back again, now we can skip through, the steps are getting faster and faster, is to actually within the Ajax method, as soon as I start, I will call a method called show loading. As soon as I finish, I will hide the loading, and if there's an error, I will go to show error. And so what do they do? Well, the show loading, there's a particular box or whatever gizmo that I will light up, and hide loading obviously does the opposite. It hides it again. So what you get with a bit of CSS, and I think you won't be able to actually see it because getting 2 data points out of it just showed up briefly like a blue banner saying loading something, but that way I can keep on adding service calls without all the time the tedious work of how do I, where do I show this, etc. But I know there's one way that I can just, okay.
Can you comment out your hide loading and just do a refresh?
Yeah. Yes, good call. Okay, that would make it visible. There it is. And there would be a text here had it not been that I think I need to recompile to get the resource file loaded up again. Yeah. All right. And then, so that's the status and error handling. And now I want to add points through a post method. Again, once we've set up the basic foundation of the module, actually the next steps are becoming, going faster and faster because the code changes now become less and less. And I add this, and what we'll see here is that there's now a add point method which does a post to map points add, and it will give me the latitude, the longitude, and a message, and then a success method if that happens. So what happens on the front end in home CSCL is that I will click on the map somewhere. I will click on the map. So here's a click, and I have a pop-up. And I used the Bootstrap modal for this. This is actually why I changed to the Bootstrap 3, because it has a pretty neat, and I find fast loading modal. And I use that a lot. So I will show up the modal, and you can add a little message, and boom, send it off into it. The modal is actually here. This is all that big HTML snippet that is there, and I will then listen for the submit button, obviously, and so when that is clicked, I will call my service with the add point, and then head off to the service. So obviously this one got an extra thing as well, and saying, okay, we'll add, and permission key being pointer. All right, so far this should be fairly easy to understand. Everyone's still with me right now. Right, no one's like, oh, what's this? Okay, so, and because I'm going to skip just reloading the page at this point and move on to the next step, because I think that's where, so the next step I wanted to show you was what if you wanted to move all of authorization into your own attribute and actually add a different layer for authorization. At this point in time, so what I do is I'm going to go for an authorized attribute for myself. This mimics a little bit what the core does, in the sense of I also have a security access level enumeration that I will say has anonymous, view, and then the pointer, the one that I added, right? The permission, edit. I'll come to you in a second. Admin and host, and that attribute will work more or less like it does in the core, which is as soon as I get asked, is this person authorized through this service? So what do? Well, I have my security object already abstracted. So I load that and say, okay, well, is this person, a host, admin, or pointer, etc. level. So I actually use that object again to give it back. What does that change? Well, it changes actually in the service method. This, I now have my map authorized attribute sitting on my post method, and it will run through that code. So now what I can do if I build this, if I'm currently logged in as a in super user mode, so I'm going to get out of that first. Refresh. And move to, in the meantime, I'm going to leave that here. Just check what alright, quick. Yeah, we're almost at the end, so don't worry, you're going to get to the drink soon. Here we go. Okay, and make sure that I can log out. Now, where did that? Good. You know what? There we go. Boom. So now I'm not logged in, right? So if I go over to the module, and currently I can only drag it because I've already added in a protection against me adding stuff. But if I'm going to try to do that, let's have a look on the on this thing, and sorry, on this one, and that should, let's have a look. Do it again. Okay, for some reason that loading thing still sits there.
It did uncomment when you did your git refresh. I noticed.
Thank you. I should do a hard reset, I guess. It should still.
I don't know why it didn't change.
That should have changed because where is the? Oh wait, hang on. It's in here, of course. Yeah. So hide the loading.
Probably not one of the files.
Oliver's fault. All of that.
At least we saw the text on the loading screen.
Yeah. All right. So currently I get this if I click on it and I say, oh, okay, well, I add this message, then boom, I get a big error message because at this point in time, I am just not authorized to add that, and I will need to actually log in to the site. At this point in time, I'm kind of screwed because I'm using that menu, and there we go. I go home. And if I log in as one of these people all have gotten pointer oh no, I added that module, so they still don't have that permission. Let's make sure that they get that permission a bit later, because now if I try this, they probably still don't have that. That's right. And that's good. So far so good. Why does logging out always take so long? Home, I go to the super user account, host account, there you go. Make sure that on the module, I had random names assigned to roles, so they look a bit awkward. But right, settings, and now make sure these people have permission. So auto added roles, like government add, and they are actually map pointers. So here we go, top, and update that. So by now, if I log out, I go to my home page again, and I now log in as one of these people. Then if I go to this page and I go here, then it's there. Voila. So there you go, and here is a point. There you go. So now those pointers have a possibility to just like click, add a point to this. Next step I wanted to do was to show that the authorization actually allows you to do strange little quirks that might not, you might not be able to implement using the standard authorization framework. So what I did actually is I added a new check, which was to check for the first name of Aiden, and I call it, has Aiden permission, and add that attribute to the service, and I say, okay, well now he has to have Aiden access, meaning this service should now only work for someone who has the first name Aiden. And if I compile that, rebuild, reload this page, and currently I'm logged in as asterisk, so that should not work. There you go. Add a point. At this point in time, I'm going to add something, and boom, there we go. I'm blocked. Now, let's log out and log in as the Aiden person, which I thought was just underneath that. Right, now let's go home and go to Aiden and go back to our module and say, okay, and now it should fit there. Okay, so now Aiden has permission to add points, and that's it. I've used this method actually in the blog module, if you ever want to check that out, because the blog module actually, per blog, you can configure who is allowed to add comments underneath the blog article. So I couldn't use the regular permissions infrastructure in DNN because it's actually particular to the blog module. So there's a blog authorize attribute in the blog module that uses this very same method. Now, next step is what about if I want to add something more involved through WebAPI. Now there are two methods to do this. You can pump out data over WebAPI, which is what it was designed for, in JSON, and create things in HTML using JavaScript, using something like Knockout, or you've seen Angular, of course, here mentioned as well, but it's a bit of an overkill. Mustache, other templating solutions, or you could also do that on the server side. Now, what I will with that, what you can do is the following. I'm just going to close a few of these. So we've seen custom authorization. But now what I will do is, as I've created a control, which I will give, the three things that I mentioned before that I needed: the Razor file, local resource file. If there is some model, I can feed that in there as well. And the third thing is actually the complete context of where we are, a DNN module context. That will allow the core's Razor engine to actually function, and I can do that within the context of a web API request. So now what I can do is, if I'm in my services controller, and the example I'm going to use is that the little pop-up in our map will have a little name underneath it that you can click of the person who added it, and I will show a pop-up of that person's details, right? So the pop-up comes up. So what it needs to do is, when you click that, it needs to go to the server and say, hey, who is this? And then the server sends out a blob of HTML that I can just pump into the modal of Bootstrap. So how does that work? Well, we get one extra method here, which is the user, get user. I've called this method. The get user method pumps out HTML. And what it does, it will pump it into this modal. So there's a map pop-up 2 here. And what it will try to do is get this Razor view into that model based on the user that we're going to feed it. And if I go to the service, I have it here. I have get user. I will instantiate that new control. I will feed it that user details, CHHTML, the Razor view. I will give it the object of that user as the model, so that when you go to the Razor, it has the model display name, model first name, model last name, right? These are all the user info properties that I'm addressing here, and the resulting HTML is pumped out as string content, over the wire through WebAPI, right? So if I'm going to start up Fiddler, so that gets it a little bit easier to see what is happening. Right, rebuild, and reload. Boom. Right, now we get to see what is coming up. There we go. Google API, what have you. All right, clear it out. Okay, now we have our map. Now, if I get one of these points, right? I just changed the little template. What it shows the display name of the user, and it's got a link to show me, by user ID what it is. And so now, what has happened is the following: this call was made to the server. So web API call to connect map API map points get user, the get user one, with the user ID. The user ID was used to fetch the user from the database, put that into the Razor control, and pump it out as basically as HTML. This was sent back by the web API. At that point in time, you capture it on the client side, pump it into the modal. That happens here. Show user. So show the user. That will be the data that comes out, becomes the HTML of that modal. Boom, fire up the modal. 3 lines of code in your JavaScript there, and you have feedback like that running through the web API. So this is what basically what I would show you. The last step is just a detail. You can actually even improve things a little bit by having your own API controller class that sits in between the DNN API controller and your services, all your services controller, right? They now go to the map API controller. Just going to eliminate these. And what happens is that what I want to show is that there you can abstract your settings as well and your security, making it easier in your controller to kind of access all this stuff as your, because we have the active module, so I can get my settings from it. And in the services, be able to access those settings at any point in time. Don't need to instantiate them in the methods individually. Again, may seem like an overkill, but at the same time, once your controllers start to get more complex, these kind of things can make your code more conducive to growth later as you start adding more stuff, and makes it a lot easier if you have any bugs to find them, basically. That's the thing. So, I feared I was gonna have a lot to run through building out this fairly easy module, and I hope you've been able to bear with me on this stretch. If you have any questions, please let me know. This code will become available on GitHub for you to examine, and ask me any questions if you have them.
So, from architecture point of view, it's really great example. So for sure we will study the company and come back. I have one additional question.
Yes.
So, okay, we put Razor here, it is interesting. Also, it is somehow we prepare our development for DNN Next.
Yeah.
Because it will be MVC or Razor based, we do not have web forms or user controls. What is with other parts of this architecture? How that is, let's say, compatible with the vision of Next?
I think.
Is it too early to talk about it? Or?
Yeah.
I think you're saying that you've got a lot of the stuff is in web services calls, or web API will be part of VNext. JavaScript obviously is supported. The actual injection, the way that Peter is handling the Razor view is different.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you may not because of MVC or even I mean, it is possible, and we haven't, that we could directly support Razor script page. We don't have, I mean, because that's available in ASP.NET 5. So the likelihood is that, there might be a little bit to change on how you manage your Razor views, but essentially you've pushed stuff down into as much down out of the web form as you can. So there will still be some.
Yeah.
I would, as I said yesterday when you, but somebody asked the question, what mode would I recommend for people to make modules today? I would probably recommend you use the pure spot approach today, because that will require much less change than because even MVC will have some changes to do, and it is a server-side technology, so it's not a front-end technology. Everything today is front-end technology, is whatever a JavaScript library you use. So if you are comfortable in programming in JavaScript, then go Spot. If you're less comfortable in JavaScript, go MVC or go approach like Peter's stuff.
And also, of course, one of the advantages of this is already compatible with a whole bunch of 7 versions, right? So
the core Razor support came back in about 6 something.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, as you start to think about how you're going to move from DNN 7, DNN 8 into the DNN Next world, one thing I would suggest to keep in mind is Razor is really good when you need some server-side processing on the actual HTML output. If all you're doing is pumping out some HTML and some JavaScript, then in DNN 8 you have a much lighter weight approach which doesn't involve Razor at all. And so from a performance perspective, injecting that into the page is actually much faster than injecting and spinning up a whole Razor host and running through the Razor engine, right? So just injecting HTML is always going to be faster than injecting a Razor page. But there are lots of things you can do with Razor that you can't do with HTML and a few tokens, right? So,
Anyone else? No? Well, thank you. There's at 4:30, we're all expected in the main hall, so you have a quarter of an hour to refresh yourself, and yeah, I'd like to see
Takes me
you.
a quarter of an hour to wash my cabbage.